35th President John F. Kennedy was one of four brothers, all of whom had presidential ambitions. In every election from 1956 to 1980, a Kennedy would be in the national discussion for either president nor vice president. But the idea of a Kennedy presidency was around even before 56. It started with his father, Joseph Kennedy Sr., their father, a businessman and politician, had long desired the presidency for himself, but he looked for his children to fulfill the dream he planned for all of his sons to eventually serve as United States presidents. From oldest to youngest, the first was Joe Jr. Joe Jr. was the youngest of them. His parents would often brag that he would become president one day without the aid of his father, but simply on his own merits. And his parents told a reporter that he would become president one day that the boy's parents have already decided on. He did well in academics and sports. In 1943, he joined the Navy in his early step in his path to the presidency. However, it's as far as he ever got. 3 years into his service, he was killed in a plane accident. He planned to become the senator of Massachusetts, but however, the most he had ever accomplished in politics was serving as a delegate in the 1940 Democratic National Convention, and it then fell on the second oldest son, John F. Kennedy, would make the way for the rest of them. He served in the Navy during World War II. In 1946, a year after he came back from the Navy, he won the congressional seat that was meant for Joe Jr. He moved on to the United States Senate and in 1960 was elected president of the U.S.A. 3 years into his term, he was killed by an assassin, leaving his older brother Robert to take up the mantle. Robert, aka Bobby, was 10 years older than Jack. Bobby also served in the Navy. Bobby was a lawyer at age 26. During Jack's presidency, Bobby served as Attorney General. He was only 38 years old when Jack was assassinated. The remainder of Jack's term passed to Kennedy's Vice President, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who then ran for his own term. In 1964, voters overfavorably whelmed Robert as Johnson's running mate, but however, the mutual hatred between the two would never allow for this to happen. Thus, Bobby would have to wait his turn, but he wouldn't have to be waiting long. In 1964, at the Democratic National Convention, he spoke in tribute to his dead brother, receiving a 22-minute applause from the audience. He had never been elected to a public office at age 38 and was dead set on the presidency and ready to speed through the steps to get there. Immediately after he knew that he wouldn't be picked as Lyndon B. Johnson's running mate, he planned to become either the governor of Massachusetts or senator of New York, depending on, quote, which would be a better way to make a run for the presidency in future years. He ended up winning the New York Senate race and took his seat in 1965. Just 3 months into his 6-year Senate term, he announced his run for the 1968 Democratic nomination. His goals were doubly ambitious as he was challenging incumbent Lyndon B. Johnson. And according to Bobby himself, almost everyone around him advised him not to run due to the possibility of challenging an incumbent. His parents were also worried he might suffer the same fate as Jack. Also, unlike Jack and Joe Jr., he was only taking on the presidency without the aid of his father. In 1960, Joseph Kennedy Sr. suffered a stroke which left him unable to speak, and he would die in 1969. He ought to leave early as President Johnson declined to run for re-election, he ran against Senator Eugene McCarthy and Vice President Hubert Humphrey. Well, Hubert H. Humphrey was the favorite for the nomination. Kennedy's performance in the primaries was making him more and more a serious contender. But however, on June 5th, 1968, after celebrating a speech from his win in California, he was shot several times. The convention was about to pick him, though people still debate had he been the nominee, how had he lived. But now the mantle now passed to Ted F. Kennedy. He had big shoes to fill and was the youngest of them. He seemed to be them well. At just 30, he was elected to his own term in the United States Senate. Ted also had experience campaigning for both of his brothers. In '60, he campaigned for Jack in western states, and according to many, it was a key for him winning the Democratic nomination against Lyndon B. Johnson, a political titan at the time. But however, when it became time to take up the Kennedy mantle, he hesitated. After leaving the hospital where Bobby died, Ted was immediately looked at to be the next Kennedy president to jump in the race, win the Democratic nomination, which was almost 3 months away, and be elected president in November. He was only 36. It was such a lot to carry at such a young age, and only one Democratic candidate have ever been so young, William Jennings Bryan, in 1896, and he lost that election. Such a prospect would only probably hurt his chances of winning the election even more. Thus, he refused to take up Bobby's place in 1964. A lot of him wanted him to be the running mate to the presidential candidate, but he refused this as well. Ted continued to be discussed and even pushed as a candidate for 1972 and 1976 nomination, as the party struggled through a malaise in the '70s, formed by a lack of solid leadership. However, in 1980, a decade after the death of his brother, he declared his candidacy for the 1980 Democratic nomination. Thus, it looks similar to Bobby's campaign. Both were challenging unpopular incumbents. Ted was challenging unpopular incumbent Jimmy Olaf Carter. Looking any deeper, however, he didn't show the same interest as neither Bobby nor Jack. Jack spoke of a softer vision for the country, and Bobby spoke with the tribute with a vengeance. Ted performed very poorly in the debates and eventually lost the nomination to Carter, but not before putting up a good fight. He only captured 12 states to Carter's 36. He captured over 7 million popular votes to Carter's 11 million. Republican and a long-time Kennedy family opponent and former President and Vice President Richard M. Nixon believed this to be more of a tribute to Ted's loss to Jimmy. There was some talk of Ted running again in 1984, but he didn't. After his loss against Carter, he won his Senate seat 5 more times and helped the resistance up until his death from natural causes in 2009. 1980 was the last time any of the president of the Kennedys were declared as a candidacy for either president nor vice president. From oldest to youngest, it was Joe Jr., Jack, Robert, and Edwards to make the rest of them. Had each son served a single term, a span of 16 years, and have each son served 2 full terms of 32 years. In the end, it was only 2 years and 7 months let out the single term of Jack, cut short by an assassin. But each have tried to become either president nor vice president, but neither Robert or Ted or Joe Jr. would get as far as Jack. For more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.